So, Rob, such a pleasure to speak with you. I really enjoyed the Boogeyman, and I imagine it's just such an honor to be working with a story, set in the world of Stephen King. And this is
Yeah,
also very interesting because, it's a short story of his, and this is kind of set basically afterwards. David's character in the film is kind of the main in the story there. So, how cool was it getting to work in that world and put your own stamp on this story?
it was amazing the amount of freedom we had because you're right. It's like, Beck and Woods, who wrote the first draft of the screenplay, described it really well. They said the movie is an adaptation of the short story and also a sequel to the short story all in one. And, I was amazed by how much we were able to kind of extrapolate out from the short story and just kind of how supportive King was of the whole thing. We showed him the script before we went to shoot, and he got really on board with it and was really kind of complimentary about it being a great a great way to take a short story and build it out into something that deserves to be longer and deserves to be feature length. And it was the kind of important thing for us is that even the stuff we were inventing wholesale felt like it deserved to be in the Stephen King universe. And so me and Mark, who's Mark Heyman, who's the guy who wrote the movie, we're always going back to the short story and to King's other works, and just making sure that it felt like as we were building this out, it was something that belonged in the canon of King.
Yeah, I think you did a great job of that, and I loved Sophie Thatcher's performance as Sadie.
Incredible.
She's really just like the emotional core of that. Can you speak to just her as an actress because I thought she killed it.
I mean, she's insanely great. She's so. I mean, she's a wonderful person, a wonderful actor, and a wonderful collaborator. The amount that she had to put herself through for this movie is insane. And I don't think anyone, including me and her, really realized it until we were on set, that every single day she was having to scream and cry and run and fall. And it's such a committed physical performance. And yeah, I completely, I'm in awe of her stamina of doing a movie like this, where she's basically in every single shot of the film, and she would turn up every day and give it completely her all. And the great thing about Sophie as well, other than her ability as an actor, which is incredible, is she's a genre lover. She loves horror, and she understands the beats of it. She understands the grammar of it, and so she can take a scene like, Sadie walks down the hallway with a Zippo lighter that won't turn on. She can take a moment like that that's like, it's essential horror grammar, these scenes of characters following strange noises and wandering, into dark basements. She can take those, she understands them, she understands the language, but she can also ground them in great performance. And understand what I'm asking of her in these moments that perhaps other actors who aren't as, enamored with horror movies wouldn't.
Yeah, she did a great job. And I was curious about just how you approached the actual boogeyman in the movie because how was it kind of balancing the usage of him? Because, you want to build suspense, but you also want to feature enough of him to have an impact. So how was it kind of finding that balance?
Well, luckily the balance had kind of been found for us in other movies. So I went in being like, Alien and Jaws are our two references. They show the perfect amount of the creature. They let your mind do a lot of the work, but the glimpses you do have of it, you'll never forget. You'll never forget Bruce the Shark, and you'll never forget the Xenomorph. So while we were editing the movie, we had the amount of time the alien is on screen and the amount of time the shark is on screen. And every week during the edit, we would time how much the monster was in the movie and compare it to those two. And we were trying to hit that sweet spot of making the audience feel paranoid that the creature was always going to pop up and that the creature could potentially be present in any moment. Like your background right now is a poster image from the movie, which is, speaks to kind of what we were going for. You got this kind of huge area of darkness, and then just this little hint of the creature. And we were constantly, me and Eli Bourne, the cinematographer, we were constantly framing shots like, keeping my open closet in the background, so the audience always, their eyes were always kind of going to these dark areas of the screen and imagining the creature, even if he wasn't there. So even though he's not on screen for very long, hopefully it feels like his presence is kind of there throughout the movie.
That's great. And David Dasmalchian's having a great year, and his role's,
Deserves it.
small but very important in this movie. Can you speak to just what he brought to the character? Because I thought he nailed it.
He's Yeah, he's incredible. I've said this before, but I want him to be in every single movie that I ever make because he's just a phenomenal actor and a great human being and also like Sophie, a kind of rabid horror fan. And the thing that he brought to the movie and the thing he wanted to bring to this part um, was kind of an empathy that kind of is ultimately there in the King short story, but the character in King short story is much more kind of abrasive, and he's racist and bigoted and sexist and kind of softens over the course of the short story. Whereas with David's conception of the character and working with me and Mark Heyman, the writer, we wanted this to be a guy who is in need of somebody to listen to him, somebody who's reaching out, somebody who wants to be understood, and someone who you have a lot of sympathy for when he enters the room, and that slowly there's a kind of sinister kind of like grip that takes over that scene, and you start to kind of suspect that this guy might have had something to do with the death of his children. And he was just able to play that so beautifully, this kind of vulnerability, but still the kind of like physicality and presence and threat of violence. It was a kind of reimagining of the character that was, a large part down to David's down to David's take on the character.
You have Night of the Ghoul coming up in the future, and Scott Snider, what an incredible comic writer. And
Great
what
comic.
about that comic just, got your attention and showed you that it was prime for a movie?
I've always been I'm a huge film buff, and I love the era of movies that he's harking back to, the kind of classic Universal monster movies. But I've also always been looking for a movie that's I've always been looking for a curse movie, something that's in the vein of The Ring, something where you get a sense of something having been passed on to you, like It Follows. And there's a great sense of kind of claustrophobia and mounting dread that's in that comic book that comes from such an unusual place. The idea of kind of combining The Ring with this this kind of dark chapter of Hollywood history. It's like such a great way into that type of horror that I've never seen before. And yeah, we've got a great. I don't know if it's been announced who's writing that yet, but we've got a great writer who's already turned in a fantastic draft on that. So I'm excited, hopefully, to be shooting that one soon. When a deal's made on the strike front.
That's awesome. And then my last question for you, you obviously have a fondness for found footage and stuff like the Blair Witch Project. Is that something more you want to do within that genre, or do you feel like you've kind of explored that space?
I feel for now I've kind of done what I wanted to do with both Host and Dashcam, which are both such wildly different movies. I think if I was to make another found footage movie, it would have to be something that was breaking new ground for me. I wouldn't want to try and go back and repeat the success of Host or the kind of mania of Dashcam. I'd want to find a story that justified itself, but I think it's so much about context. Neither of those movies. I wouldn't have imagined myself making either of those movies, and then obviously the world went through such a huge shift during COVID that both of those movies felt like they needed to be made and needed to be made back to back. So I'd love to keep myself open because you can make them faster, cheaper, with more freedom, and there's so much inventiveness that comes with that, which I even as I'm going on and making studio movies like The Boogeyman, I don't want to lose the ability to go off and make small, nasty little found footage movies like those.